This is BBC Radio Kent. Keen to hear from you what you want this country's asylum policy to look like. Fortress Britain, do we want to say, actually, we don't want to take anyone? Do we want to say we want to take people, but we want them to arrive in a particular way? That is part of the suggestion from Priti Patel today, to stop illegal people smuggling, to encourage people by carrot and stick, means by rewarding and by punishing people who arrive through safe and legal routes to this country. But do we have those safe and legal routes? It's all very well saying we don't want people to arrive illegally, but if you believe you have a genuine asylum claim and you can't find a legal method to arrive to this country, what would you do? Ben Greening joins us now. Ben is the Executive Director of Migration Watch. Ben, good morning. Thank you for joining us on BBC Radio Kent.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Just remind our listeners what Migration Watch is and what it does.
Yes, so we're an independent organisation which was set up in 2001 by the former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Lord Green of Deddington. It's now chaired by Alp Mehmet, who was one of the first ethnic minority ambassadors ever appointed in the UK. And what we do is essentially we do research, we look into policy, we make recommendations. We believe basically that the sustainable levels of properly managed immigration are of a distinct benefit to society, but that current levels of immigration are too high. And what we need is reasonable control of immigration. OK. Asylum is clearly one form of immigration, isn't it? It can end up that way, yes, because if someone claims... Well, my point being that not everybody who comes to this country is an asylum seeker. I mean, everyone who seeks asylum here is an immigrant, but there are other forms of immigration as well. Absolutely, yes. I mean, immigration in the year to March 2020 was over 300,000. Is that a net figure, or is that just entrance to this country? Yeah, that's a net figure. The gross immigration figure was over 700,000, which was the largest ever recorded. And what is, of that 300,000 net arrivals to this country, how many are asylum seekers? Well, there's around, at the moment, there's around 30,000 asylum claims last year. But that was a bit slightly lower than normal because of the COVID pandemic. Well, when you say it was slightly lower than normal, it's been around 30,000 since 2015, hasn't it? Yeah, it's about 30,000 now, but it was as high as 40,000 back in the period 2015 to 2019. So it's actually lower now than it was 5 years ago. Yeah, it is a bit lower because of the pandemic. Well, we don't know why, do we? Because if it was higher in 2015, but also lower last year, we can't put that down to the pandemic. That could be other reasons as well. We can't possibly know all the reasons yet, can we? Well, I guess it'd be interesting to see whether it bounces back. Yeah, I'd be interested to see. OK, but we are not at a point where we are at any worse. We're not in some sort of crisis. We're not seeing massive increases in asylum claims in this country compared to the last few years. I'm just trying to set the context for why Priti Patel is trying to do something now. And it can't be presumably predicated on numbers, because the numbers aren't, we're not suddenly in a massive crisis of asylum applications. Well, it depends on what you're looking at. I mean, I'm looking at the data. Point to the rising asylum abuse, and that is the main thing that these proposals are intended to address. Yeah, I want to get on to those proposals, but just setting the context, this isn't a response to a sudden and massive increase and influx in asylum. I mean, though we tell the story of people arriving in little rickety boats, the fact that there were 183 people yesterday, people shouldn't misinterpret that as there being a sudden overall rise in clandestine arrivals into this country. Well, there was a third rise of clandestine arrivals in the back of lorries between 2018 and 2019. The number of arrivals so far this year across the Channel has been nearly 3 times. In the boats or overall, including in lorries? Yeah, that was in boats. Yeah, there has been a rise in the people in boats, but there's been a fall in the people in lorries, hasn't there? Arriving illegally. But let me. You feel as though you're trying to cherry pick figures for me to make things look worse than they are. Are you not slightly trying to cherry pick data here? My overall point is, and you made it at the beginning, that figures are relatively stable and have been since 2015 to 16, lower than they were then, but on average, around 30,000 people seeking asylum in this country each year at the moment. Not a sudden increase, not a sudden decrease. Well, what it seems to me is that you're denying the fact that there's rising asylum abuse.
We haven't even got on to that. I'm just talking about, I'm not denying anything. I'm just trying to set the context of numbers, and then we can get on to what can be done to tackle people and the method of arrival. But can we
acknowledge that there's rising...
Can we just, for on this point, and then we can move on to the other points you want to make.
Asylum abuse or not?
Sorry?
Is there rising asylum abuse or not?
Do you mind awfully if I ask the questions? Because that's generally how an interview works.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go ahead.
Okay. What do you make of the Home Secretary's proposals, and why now?
We support them. We basically welcome them because the asylum system is very close to collapse. And they're very rightly designed, these proposals, to remove those who make false claims and to deter what has become known as asylum shopping, those who come here from countries which are already safe. So effective action on removals will be key to this and will be absolutely strongly supported by the public.
It's interesting that you put the spin on why this is happening completely differently from the architect of it, Priti Patel, who says this is to stop people trying to get into the country, losing their lives and being harmed by entry in this way, and to support other people who can't get in by that method.
That's absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah, this will save lives because it will deter people from making unnecessary and deadly crossings from safe countries, and that is the point.
Will it stop them, though? It will punish them, but is there evidence that this will actually stop it happening? It will disadvantage them when they get here and try to make a claim.
No, we hope it will stop them from making these unnecessary trips, but we didn't come up with these proposals, and what we want to see is effective action, and it needs to be accompanied by effective enforcement action, which has sadly been declining in the last few years.
Do you also welcome what appears to need to go alongside it? And Priti Patel was talking about this on the BBC today, that she wants to achieve more legal routes to make it easier for people to come by, presumably, methods like the Syrian resettlement programme, more plans like that.
Sure. The resettlement over the last few years has seen us directly resettle more people than any EU state since 2015. That's nearly 30,000 people. There are already very many safe and legal routes already in place.
Well, tell me about some of them, because the only one that was articulated by the Home Secretary this morning was the Syrian one, and a small, I think, system for residents from Hong Kong. What are the many legal resettlement methods at the moment?
Well, there's 4 of them, and one of which is the Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. And that's been, as I said, been going on since 2015, in which tens of thousands of people have been directly resettled here from very vulnerable, dangerous regions. And that's more than any EU state, as I said. Yeah,
but you're making the same point. You then said there are many. So what are some of the others?
Well, there's 3 others, and I could take you through them if you want, but that's not really it's not really the point. There's a huge number.
Well, surely it's the point. If we don't have sufficient safe and legal methods for people to come to this country and try and seek asylum, then they will continue to come illegally, won't they?
I just said there's 4. And there's also
well, you used the word many, and then you changed it to 4, but that's fine. You can reposition your answers. That's absolutely fine. But if are there enough? Are there enough now, or do we need more if we are going to stop people coming illegally in a clandestine fashion?
We've got enough. Many safe and legal routes, and some of the safe and legal routes are called visas as well, because many people who are crossing the Channel are economic migrants and not refugees. In fact, 80% of those who claimed asylum after crossing the Channel in 2020 were rejected. Their claim was not to be found to be valid.
And what happened on appeal?
That's not known yet, because the figures were based on initial decision.
But lots of them are the decisions are changed on appeal, aren't they?
Yes, increasingly so.
Okay, so that 80% isn't representative of the final findings.
Well, it'd be interesting to see updated figures on what happened after appeal.
I thought you might have that, but...
Well, if you have the figure, that would be interesting to hear.
I don't work at Migration Watch, which collects these figures, but I will try and get them. I'm sure our audience would be interested to hear. Is there anything else that Priti Patel should be doing to improve our asylum? Because you said you didn't write these rules, these ideas, though you welcome them. Is there something missing?
Is there something missing from these proposals? Well, there's a whole range of different proposals, which, I mean, I can list them, the ones that we've heard so far.
No, I'm asking you what Migration Watch, if anything, would add. What do you think should happen to bring asylum applications to an acceptable level and treat people fairly?
The one thing that we want to see is much more enforcement. As I said, it's been cripplingly under-resourced in recent years. And it's just not had.
What's it? When you say it's been cripplingly under-resourced, sorry, what are you referring to?
Immigration enforcement.
So we need more people working on these claims? We need more officers, do we? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I'm talking about the specific department in the Home Office, which is called Immigration Enforcement. Yes. Which has had major budget cuts, savage cuts in recent years.
And you're echoing here the immigration lawyer we spoke to earlier on, who says it's not the fault of the asylum seekers that the system is in crisis. It's the fault of a poor investment in, presumably he's referring to the same department as you. So you guys are all on the same page on that one.
Well, if we agree, then that's a good thing. But I don't think it's the fault of the asylum claimants. What I think it has been the fault of is the politicians and the senior civil servants who have led this over the years into the state that it's in. I'm afraid that the asylum system is overwhelmed and being abused on a rampant scale, and that's been increasing, and it really needs to be dealt with. And the mass majority of the public support that.
What's the evidence for that?
Of rising abuse?
No, of the mass majority of the public supporting.
Well, 77% say they want tougher action on illegal immigration.
That's a totally different point, isn't it, to resources?
Between 70 and 80% support the compliant environment measures which were introduced in 2014 and 2016 in the Immigration Act. And
when was, just so we're clear with our audience, which poll was that and where was it published?
Which one? The 77% one? That was the Project 28 poll.
By?
Project 28.
Okay, I haven't heard of them, sorry. We'll look into that. I think it's really important for our audience that where we create statistics, we're clear about where they've come from. Ben, thank you very much indeed for joining us.